I don't know. I'm taking notes.
I hit the record button, so you're good.
Great. Okay, that's great. Yeah, so I'm Lindsay. I am a marriage and family therapist in Knoxville. I'm originally from Knoxville, and I'm here still again. And yeah, I joined this group or kind of helped from the beginning just because I had a son 6 years ago, and just realized, wow, this is a really big change. And I was already a therapist and had not previously really worked with that population of moms. And so after having a kid, I just thought, like, how could I be more helpful to moms? Like, kind of recognizing this huge identity shift that happened, and how even with good support systems, it was just like a big whoa of wow, okay, this is a thing that is really life altering in ways that I felt sort of prepared for, and yet then still was just realizing how big it was. So then I just looked for training on postpartum issues, found PSI, and then kind of just connected and found people that wanted to get that started here. And so, yeah, is there anything more you'd like to know?
No, that's awesome. Yep, you addressed the who, the why, the what, and the how.
Yes.
Christy.
So I'm Christy Stewart, and I am a family nurse practitioner. I work in women's health, but most importantly, I'm a survivor of postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety. It was awful. It was the worst thing I've ever been through in my whole life. It was crippling, and I think I survived it because I had money and insurance and a husband and a mom who dropped everything and moved in with me for 6 weeks. And so I realized that I came from a place of privilege, that with insurance and money and a mom that could help and a husband and a bunch of other family and friends, that they got me through this horrible situation. Couldn't fathom what it would have been like with no insurance or money or being a single parent. And so this was an opportunity for me to give back in a way and to use my experience to maybe prevent someone else from going through it as horribly as I went through it. The other big thing is I'm a nurse practitioner and work in women's health. And when I went through nurse practitioner school, and I went through a really good program, it was 2.5 years. I put in extra clinical hours, did all the things, straight A's, did all the things right. I received 0 training on postpartum depression and anxiety. My psych lecture was maybe an hour of lecturing for the whole program. And so I also come from a place of knowing how people are clueless, that are well-trained, well-intentioned, did well in school, and have really a heart to help people, but really don't know what they're doing when it comes to postpartum depression. So, and all PMADs. But my own experience with the medical profession before I got to a psychiatrist was not great. And so my primary care didn't know what to do with me. My OBGYN didn't know what to do with me. And so had it not been for me finding quick psych help via a emergency psych hospital, I wouldn't have had access to someone so specialized. So anyways, all of those things put together, that's why I'm here.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing that your gynecologist didn't know how to help. Oh, that's who we women turn to sometimes. Oh, okay, Rachel.
So I'm Rachel Hansen, and I am the current project director with the Federal Healthy Start program that serves South Central Upper Cumberland. We have home visitors that do evidence-based home visiting, and I have therapists on staff who specialize in perinatal mood disorders, as well as a nurse practitioner who specializes in psychiatric care. So I came to PSI, one, as a professional standpoint, but two, also, I struggled very bad with postpartum depression, anxiety after my third child. And much like Christy just said, I recognized from a state of privilege because I worked for the grant at that time. So I was given plenty of grace to be at home, take a break. I had an amazing group around me that would check in, and I had a great doctor. But I think a lot of that had to do with coming from privilege of insurance and money to seek that help. And so many of our families that we're serving don't. So really excited to just keep diving into this work to help those families.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks, Rachel. Erica.
Hi, yep, I'm Erica Davis, and I am one of the therapists that specializes in perinatal mood disorders that works for Rachel. I think I got to this field because the attachment between mom and baby has always been something that is a calling of mine. So finding my group of people and realizing like the significance of a mom's mental health was huge. But I also experienced perinatal OCD, and nobody around me knew what was happening, and I didn't know at the time what was happening. And so like that whole experience put a big strain on my last marriage. And like most, like, right, we just want to take what we've learned and prevent other people from suffering the way we did.
And all of you in your jobs get to give back. I love that. Mary.
Hello, I'm Mary Alonzo. I am a teacher, a special education teacher of young 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. So I think, our only board member that doesn't also work sort of in this field, which is kind of fun and interesting. I had my first child 5 years ago on Friday. He just turned 5. And in pregnancy and in postpartum, I had a lot of anxiety, depression, and OCD pretty severely. And one thing that was really frustrating was I would do a lot of research and I would try to find, resources. And, I was able to, like everyone has said, with money and insurance and support, piece together kind of a path back to wellness. But it was really frustrating that there weren't any PMAD specific people in the area or support groups or anything like that. And had I known more about PSI at the time, or known about, called the helpline, I think there were maybe a few more things that I could have found. And so what my big reason for joining PSI was because I didn't want other women to not know that PSI exists and not find the resources and not have to do the research themselves. And so as I was kind of coming into PSI and learning more about it and thinking about starting a chapter, I found out that there was another kind of contingent of people wanting to do the same thing. And so, like Lindsay, I was one of our kind of first 4 or 5 members. And so that is exciting. And also, Julia Wood is my sister-in-law, and she was incredibly supportive when I was going through all of my postpartum mental health issues. But so I was excited to kind of bring her on board as well. So that's my spiel.
I love it. Well, with that, we'll toss it to Julia since we've got a connection.
So I'm Julia Wood, and I'm a psychiatrist, and I trained in Boston. And in my 4th year of residency, I spent all of my elective time working with the women's mental health group there. And I was at Massachusetts General Hospital McLean training program, and Mass General Hospital has they have like a group of maybe 7 perinatal psychiatrists. So they have one of the, if not the biggest, I guess up there with like UNC, group of perinatal psychiatrists in the country. So it was a great program, and and I learned a lot there and really enjoyed, at that time, I did a lot of consultation with women who were planning pregnancy. So not yet pregnant, but taking medication, thinking ahead about what to do to stay well during pregnancy and the postpartum period. And I also had my first child during that time. So it's a really nice place to be working when you have your first baby. Everybody's very supportive. And then a year after residency, I moved with my family to East Tennessee because this is where my husband's from, and did a variety of things, but never really was able to make perinatal mental health work much of my practice. And so when Mary asked me to join PSI, I was really excited about the work, as it's always been an interest of mine. And then I left my job and inherited a large private practice in January of 2019. And so have been able there to do a little bit more perinatal psychiatry, though I am exactly who you can only access if you have money, as we are out of network with insurance. And so PSI is hopefully my way of giving back and possibly offering some of my knowledge to other people out there so we can reach more people.
Thank you, Julia. And Diana, welcome.
Thanks, y'all. I'm sorry I was late. Good to see everyone. I'm listening to your beautiful stories while I scarf down food. But so I'm Diana. I am a clinical psychologist and really entered the world of perinatal professionally before I entered it personally. So I started out as a child and adolescent psychologist. And the more I did that work, the more I realized to help kids, I need to help parents. And I just kept going younger and younger in wanting to do early intervention prevention work until I got to perinatal work and got to do a 2-year fellowship up at University of Michigan, really specializing in perinatal psychiatry and psychology, and love working with the perinatal population. And then, goodness, 2 years ago, got pregnant, had my own journey with some perinatal depression and anxiety, got to live it firsthand, and I'm very grateful to get to be a part of this board and this community of folks who's working so hard to make a difference.
Thank you, Diana, and everyone for sharing your story and kind of why, and so you can really speak to the mission as it has affected you personally or professionally here. So I'll give, I would say a prize. I don't really have a prize, but can anyone off the top of their head without cheating say the mission statement? You're like, no, it's fine. Okay, so we're not super attached to it right now. But part of our agenda and what I was tasked with was for us to review it. So I've got our mission statement. I'll share screen. I've got kind of on there what it means for a good mission statement. And then we're going to have some dialogue and we'll go from there. Okay, you should be seeing my screen. Okay, so right now we have our mission is to promote awareness, education, prevention, and treatment of perinatal mental health issues affecting mothers, their families, and support systems in all areas of Tennessee. So I like the mission statement. It's valid enough to be considered a mission statement. A lot of times people write a vision statement as a mission statement, but you've got the purpose. You've got, well, the purpose is kind of weak. You've got your target population, women, their families, and support systems in Tennessee. You've got your broad methods. You are kind of missing the purpose. So, almost to where they, it's fluffy language, but to achieve well-being and happiness or whatever. So we haven't gotten the why. We're helping them, and here's who we're helping, where they live. But we don't quite have the why. Yeah, let's open it up for discussions. What are your thoughts on the mission statement?
Do you know, is this simply this is the PSI mission statement that we just adapted for Tennessee? Is that correct? I think.
I think that's what we did. We did it at our first meeting, and then we don't have great records from that first meeting.
Are you required by branding and licensing to have the same mission statement? Or do you have
Just required to not do anything that would be like outside of that mission statement, is my understanding. Like, we're allowed to word it and write what we want. We're just not allowed to be like, our mission is to, like, I don't know, help all babies go to kindergarten reading. Like, we just can't create something really different.
Now, I'm an outsider. I do sit on the board of the infant mental health world, so I'm very familiar with clinical terms and such too. Perinatal doesn't speak to me. If you want community sort of awareness, I Googled it and I'm sort of still kind of in the world of infant mental health. And I was like, what does that mean? So if I were to change a word, I might change that one just for more sort of general acceptance. I also pulled some examples from Thursday. I was working with state of Michigan. It was interesting, Diana, hearing that you studied in Michigan, because they sort of are the hub for nurturing relationships and infant mental health. But I'm working with that agency on their mission statement. So I've been in mission statements all week. And so I did start crafting a couple others. Just sort of I was in the headspace to do it, but our mission is to promote the well-being of postpartum mothers, their families, and their support systems through awareness, education, and treatment access in Tennessee. I don't know that I love that right there either, but we educate, advocate, and collaborate to advance the well-being and mental health of postpartum mothers, their families, and support systems in Tennessee. Just to give some additional language, even looking at this too, I'm like, we don't quite have the end goal, but
Elle, I love that word access, because that was actually the one thing I was that when we talk as a board, that is the word that comes up over and over. But so I totally understand your point about the word perinatal. It is not a super accessible word, but I do think we need, so PSI, what is being found out is that oftentimes people who have postpartum mood disorders also have them during pregnancy. And so I think however we say it, I do think it's important to address that. That's why we use the word perinatal, because it's that entire period of time. So whether it was, I don't know if there's a better way to say that, but I do think that's important. And I think us one thing that's very important to me is raising awareness of the fact that there is such a thing as, prenatal anxiety, prenatal depression, and all of those things, because I had them and I didn't know that they were a thing. So that was just kind of my 2 cents on just using the word postpartum. But if other people have thoughts on that.
Would it be helpful
to part of your mission? Absolutely.
Would it be helpful to hear the PSI, Big PSI's mission?
Mm-hmm.
Big PSI's mission is, the mission of Postpartum Support International is to promote awareness, prevention, and treatment of mental health issues related to childbearing in every country worldwide. So that might be a different.
That also includes infertility, which is, an area. I don't know that it's something we as a chapter have delved into, but that is, a piece of the puzzle for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we ended up with like mothers, family support systems to try to like cover more than it's just for mom. But I think the way that PSI has it, just generally everything related to childbearing is a much bigger umbrella that's maybe helpful to pull in all those areas or all those issues that might come up.
Yeah, because if we say prenatal, that doesn't quite include fertility struggles. They're also prenatal, but are they? I don't know. You're the experts.
Like
They could be, or they could not be prenatal. I like that of childbearing, because until you all just read that mission. I've never even thought about infertility. I know that issue, and I know we have support groups through PSI, but I had never thought about it.
Mhm.
Okay, so what would that language would be? That includes childbearing?
So the original PSI one is to promote awareness, prevention, and treatment of mental health issues. So it's just generally mental health issues. It doesn't mention pregnancy or postpartum, but just mental health issues related to childbearing.
Yeah, that reduces a lot of words too. And I think everyone knows what childbearing.
Yes.
I hope.
Well, and honestly, though, I'm going to go back and remember that I think we had some people that didn't want to use the childbearing language because there are people who do not bear the children themselves. So then we got into that complication, and that is how we ended up. And I remember there's always a word that you're using that would be exclusive to someone. And I think that that's why we ended up away from childbearing, though I mean, someone bore the child, even if you have adopted the child. So I'm not sure. But I think that's where we ended
That's
up.
what I do like that you put in their families and support systems.
Mhm.
Yeah, I do like that. But what if you said mental health? Mental health. Did they say mental health issues related or mental health related to childbearing?
Mental health issues is what they said.
Yeah, mental
I
health.
kind of like mental health well-being. I don't know if that's possible. I really like where on the first one that you created, Elle, where it said our mission is to promote the well-being. I'd like something related to mental health or emotional health, like the emotional being or mental health well-being, specifically to tell others when we're sharing this that that it's geared towards mental health, because they, people could be like, well, the well-being. And then I like the well-being word. I think I'm agreeing with several people way better than the word issues. I don't love that mental health issues. It just makes it sound like
it sounds condescending to me. Like, oh, that's
it does.
Yeah.
It does.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I'm just looking at the top one now, looking at mothers. If we're including women who have gone through infertility and that haven't, had a child, do we want to say women and their families and support system versus mothers? I don't know. Or we could, we could say parents. Well, no, because that still, anyways. So I wondered the terminology of women versus women and their families support systems.
What if it was promote the emotional and mental health well-being?
Well, then okay, go start again.
Sorry,
you were on a roll.
I was, and then I lost it. To promote the emotional and mental health well-being. Not quite that, but related to childbearing. No, sorry, I lost it. I was trying to put the two together, but it's not going to happen. I like the way that the one else suggested started with promoting and then put the other at the back, but I don't know. Promote emotional and mental health well-being related to childbearing for families. I don't know.
I feel like if we can link the word pregnancy and postpartum in there, then we would be talking about women that are trying to get pregnant, are pregnant, were pregnant in some capacity.
Yeah, I'm like, what word is there for that? That like family's trying, but the words I keep coming up with, you know, like the creation of your family. I'm like, no, that sounds religious. The words matter, and we want to be inclusive.
I mean, I see the related to childbearing as still being inclusive, even if people who didn't bear it themselves. But that, I mean, that's not, I'm not that person who would have been hurt by that. So I'm not certain like how that affects others. But I mean, childbearing is happening. So I don't know. But that's like, I think where they came up with a good catch-all for like everybody and everything connected without it being too wordy of naming every group.
I think the issue with the childbearing is it didn't fit syntactically into promote the emotional and mental health well-being. Like you can't promote the well-being of child, you know what I mean? So once we inserted that phrase, we're going to have to rework that whole thing. Does that make any
It's
sense?
hard because the word perinatal, even though it's clinical, is like, to me, is
Perfect.
clinically word that, you know, that would encompass all of these things.
And you can shoot me down and say, no, we're sticking with this word.
I mean, if perinatal is, and I get it's still a very unrecognized term because I can speak it and say, what does that even mean? I mean, what if we put prenatal and postpartum? We define it out more because I feel like we still have to represent that prenatal period.
I don't know that prenatal is more known than perinatal.
I think if you're trying to get pregnant or you're pregnant, you hear prenatal a lot.
Okay.
But I've never heard perinatal before.
Everybody takes prenatal vitamins.
Yeah, that's true.
Are you taking your prenatals? Yeah, I don't know.
So perinatal means all. Would it be redundant to say perinatal and postpartum mothers? Because it's already including them?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. What are other thoughts? Besides how we define them, is it motivating? Is it inspirational? And does it reflect the work that you do? Now, I know you're still in startup phase and limited in internal capacity, but can you speak to what awareness you're doing, what education you're providing, what prevention methods you're, involved in? And it sounds to me by the initial statement that you are doing treatment. That's why I added treatment access down here, because you might be doing work to give them access and give them resources to get access, but you're not actually doing the treatment. But speak to me a little bit about what those mean to you.
Sorry, I have this on my brain right now. I was wondering if we could change it to access to treatment.
Yep. Yeah, that sounds better.
Well, I had it on my mind. Then we're specifically stating we're not treating, we're just connecting. Or we could even use the word connection, access, connection. Just a thought.
I like connection.
I think access implies an even deeper commitment to increasing access for people who don't have it, which is, I noticed, Elle, that you took out the word prevention, which I'm also kind of wondering, like, what would be a prevention effort on the part of PSI?
So a lot of times, when I was sort of looking at it, I kind of thought education and prevention were redundant and probably the same thing. But this was me just drafting things.
Yeah, I'd say like our current prevention thing would be education. It would be the trying to get information to women beforehand during pregnancy or upon discharge from hospital so that they're aware of what to look for, and then might even take some steps to prevent based on I don't know if we have enough in the flyer about like steps to take to prevent it. That might be something we consider, but that's the only thing I can think of that we're necessarily doing now for that. But I think it does make sense, like you were saying, to kind of put education and prevention together.
Down here, I like the word equity. You know, rather than connection, we could use an equity in treatment. And equity in a lot of mission statements, when we're adding that word, is the access and the affordability and the like acceptance of going and getting treatment. So what are your thoughts on equity in treatment?
I think it's important and probably something we should be doing. I don't think we're doing that now. We're just more trying to like identify treatment that's available and educate and make people aware of it. We're not making any strides at this point to like provide scholarships for women to go to therapy. We're not necessarily doing that work. Again, I think it's
important enough to our
we're
future.
not doing it.
I think it's important enough to our future goals to include it though, because I do think that's one of our, I do think that is a big issue in our state.
Yeah, I think we like talked about it a little bit, but we're not currently doing it. So maybe it needs to go here to motivate the future.
And it doesn't have to be one sentence.
So I was thinking, oh, go ahead. Sorry, directed someone.
I just remembered that I've had a lot of people thinking about this out in the Northeast region of our state when we had our regional like strategic board retreat a year ago. And so I just put in the chat box where we landed and wondering if any of these words are relevant or helpful. And to be honest, I just copy pasted before really thinking much about it. But increase communities' capacity to meet the needs of families impacted by perinatal mental health concerns through promoting workforce development, serving as the hub for mental health resources, and coordinating with systems. So that gets more into like, what are we going to do? But I just thought as we're wordsmithing this, it would be helpful to see that language as well. I like the idea of equity. It feels a bit vague to me to say equity in treatment. Like it almost feels like equity is such a hot word right now that we're putting it in.
Would it make sense to say either equal access to treatment or equitable access to treatment?
I like equal access. I kind of laughed to myself, Diane, when you said it, because I thought I kept going back to equity, and I'm like, I feel like everything has equity in it right now. So what does it actually mean?
What does it mean what do we want to say? I mean, I'm not against the word equity. I think it's a very relevant word, and I'm glad we're talking about it more now than ever. But yeah, what do we mean by it? Like, and to me, this gets us back to like, what are we as PSI Tennessee? What is our mission? Like, we want to do it all. We want to help everyone and fix it all. But like, if we had to really think about our particular role as a nonprofit, as a board, as a movement in our state, to me, it's really thinking about what is that role that we serve.
It's kind of why I kind of was leaning more to the word connection, because it's, even though like my heart would want to like create things for women to have treatment options, that's not exactly what we're doing. Like, we're not creating new therapy, locations. We're not creating new centers, or the equity piece to me seems a little bit bigger than maybe what we're actually going to do. The word connection to me jumped out in thinking of our coordinators and how we support the coordinators, how we're constantly, trying to find resources, update information, stay in touch with providers or hospitals. Because I don't know that we're at that point yet where we're actually going to be creating treatment options.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And I also don't see us currently as being very involved in policy. And I think policy is very closely related to equity. And I don't know if we want to move more into policy, but to me, that's another holdup with the word equity. And I think about, the systemic level things that get in the way of people having equitable access. And is that something we're interested in becoming more policy active?
I was thinking about that too with the word like advocate that we've talked about here too. I think that was something originally some people wanted to do, but it feels like we're not close to working on larger policy issues and really getting into advocacy work that is needed. Again, not to say that we won't, but currently we're more in the awareness, education, let people know this is a thing to look out for, and create a resource list for people so that they can have awareness of treatment, hopefully get connected to treatment.
I would rather you stay authentic to who you are and modify later, because I do have organizations on day one who say they're like curing cancer. I'm like, well, yeah, so stick with what you are doing so that when someone looks at your website and sees what you do, this is meaningful to today, engages people in the work, and is a better understanding. Yeah, do we want to put this on pause that we're to think about and come back to after we've talked about goals and objectives? Because this could change if we get pretty excited about where we want to go.
I think we can. Hopefully everybody's also seen what Rachel wrote in the chat box. I really like.
Yeah,
she's
sorry,
really
I just
into
kind of,
words a little bit.
I had to get into a Word document and start typing myself to try and play around.
Yeah, let me paste that in here too so we can see it on the big screen.
While you're doing that, did we let Elle know the situation about website? I don't know if we informed you of
No,
that. It is unfortunate.
Uh-oh.
we're not allowed to have a
Yeah,
website.
so the only website we get to have is one kind of mandated by big PSI that's kind of a drop down from theirs, and it's not great. But
One
our
that's
hands,
active right now,
what'd you say?
the one that's active, psichapters.com/TN.
Yes.
That you're allowed. Are you allowed to have your own Facebook?
Yes, and we
okay.
do.
Okay.
Yeah. So just wanted you to have that tiny piece of information. And I don't even know, because I haven't done it lately, if you Google like Postpartum Support International Tennessee, if that even comes up. But
It did, because I got to your website from Googling it.
okay,
It was
that's
the first thing.
nice. Okay. Just wanted to make sure you had that info, that we do not have the autonomy to make much change there.
Yeah, I think I just typed in PSI Tennessee and it came up.
Oh, but it has
Which someone else, if they need help, they're not going to Google PSI.
Yeah.
It does have our mission. That's nice.
Okay, if I Google Postpartum Health Tennessee, it's the first thing that comes up for me, but I don't know if it's because I've already been on the website today. But okay, that's a good thing to work on too. Okay, so Rachel very eloquently wrote, we educate, advocate, and collaborate to promote emotional and mental health well-being of prenatal, postpartum mothers, their families, and support systems through awareness and access to treatment in Tennessee. What are people's thoughts?
I'm into this connection word now. But I think that is perfect. But I would prefer the word.
So you would say
connection back.
replace access with connection, and then
It's my feeling, but I'm just one person.
I really like how you stuck all that together there, Rachel. That was fabulous.
It's really good. I would be curious, we can do it now or later, to hear us talk through how we advocate or how we want to advocate.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm putting that on one of our priority lists for discussion topics. Wonderful. See, guys, we're getting things done already. Okay, I'm going to stop share. I'm now going to hand it over to Julia to talk about our state of the organization. Where have we been? What's been going on?
So you kindly said I could take 10 to 15 minutes. I don't think it'll take that long. Some of you who are here with us have been with PSI from the very beginning before I joined, and some of you have joined more recently. So just a brief overview. PSI in 2018, I guess in the spring of 2018 is when PSI Tennessee was formed. I don't know how long before that PSI decided to have state chapters. I don't think it was terribly long before that. And I think four people, maybe five, it was Meredith, Lindsay, Christina, Delaney, Leanne, and I don't know if there was a fifth person. Beth, okay. Found each other and decided to form PSI Tennessee. And there was not a lot, from my understanding, there was not a lot of top-down guidance from PSI. And so they put together some bylaws and started to form a board. And a lot of it was just kind of, figuring it out along the way. The other board members were recruited really through word of mouth. Almost like, and it's kind of continued that way. Each of the board members reached out to people they knew, and a good chunk of people by December of 2018 were on the board. And we had a board retreat in 2019 where some of us got together in Nashville and got to know each other. We also, Christina, when the board was formed, had the alliance. It's the Appalachian, tell me exactly, Diana, what the acronym is, the alliance.
It's Appalachian Perinatal Mental Health Alliance.
Thank you. As a branch of PSI Tennessee. And so our state is kind of unique in this way that we have this branch. Other states don't. There are a few other states that have branches, but most of them don't. And then in 2020, I guess Christina and Leanne were originally the two co-leaders. Christina had other things going on. She stepped down from the co-lead, stayed on in the chapter for a while. I stepped up in February of 2020 to join Leanne as a co-lead. And we have continued since that time to focus on bringing in more board members and figuring out our goals. And as you all know, we recently kind of divided up into two teams to try to divide the work, and that is partly what landed us here, deciding that we wanted to have a strategic planning meeting before recruiting more board members so that we could have direction and know better who we wanted to add to the board and what kind of people we need to recruit and bring in to help us. So we have had, in 2019, we had a number of climbs across the state to raise money. And then in 2020, of course, with COVID hitting, we had one statewide virtual climb. And that's our yearly fundraiser event that we will continue to do, probably virtually this year.
Yeah. How has, numbers reached? Any sort of initial goals? Have they been met? Financially, how are we looking?
Financially, we have, I want to say we have, recently, I know I meant to look that up before I got on here, want to say we have a couple $1,000. And we have spent very little money. We have, I don't think we've had any coherent goals to date that we've all agreed upon. Different people have, when I started up in the co-lead position in 2020, I called everybody at the time on the board and talked to people about what their goals would be. And then COVID hit and we never really agreed on any goals. We also we haven't measured anything. And PSI, big PSI is in charge of the coordinators, and they are the people who, answer the hotline, talk to people, and my impression has been that they've never told me what the numbers are of what, who's calling or how many people are connected. I imagine they must keep track of those things.
So it used to be this very hodgepodge system of basically each. So I used to be a coordinator, and you were just responsible for filling out and tracking your hours and all that stuff. And no one ever did it because it was annoying. So they're now using a system called iCarol Live to track things. And so I think that has brought a lot more organization to the coordinator system. Also, the person who's now in charge of it is tremendously organized. And so she has a very clear flow chart of like how things are going. And then, yeah, so this is kind of tangential, but I think important. And so the coordinators came before chapters and the climb came before chapters. And the climb has a very clear, like someone's in charge of it. There's a very clear sequence. They've really got that down pat. Coordinators has finally found a rhythm, and that's pretty down pat. Chapters just got a new person in charge of it. One person used to be in charge of like all of those things, and now they each are their own. So chapters have existed for 3 years, but still do not have a clear direction themselves, which I think is what has made our situation. And I mean, we're not the only chapter who's feeling like we're not exactly sure what to do, because we operate outside of the coordinators, but they're allowed to be on the board, but they don't have to. And the board can facilitate climbs, but other people not on the board can facilitate climbs. So it's kind of wonky. And I brought this up at the last CLC meeting, and basically they agreed, and they were like, this is true. We're, the new person, Jen, is going to meet with every chapter and talk about what they want to do. And so I think hopefully over the next year or so, that'll be a little clearer. But I do think that's kind of just something to know that I don't want to say working against, but that we're kind of overcoming.
Elle, I don't know if you're familiar, but the basic flow, I think, is that we would somehow let people know that perinatal, things are real. Then they call the PSI warm line. When they call that line, they get in touch with the volunteer coordinator, which is not us. I mean, Mary used to do it, and we have had board members that do it, but they call that number, get connected with the coordinator, and then we want that coordinator to have all the resources that we have identified or put together. So that's kind of the flow of how PSI works to connect families to support. And then they have independent stuff on their website of groups that they run directly and things like that. So that's kind of,
they're running the groups, they're running the call center.
a website with lots of things they run. We might have a coordinator who can call and say, well, there's also a group at your local library, or there's also these 5 therapists in your town. Here's one that takes your insurance, or here is, I don't know, just other support, like other options that are available. So our main communication thing is to get people to know that phone number to call. And then once they call, that person has a whole wealth of information that they're able to share with that family. But if they never call that line, they never find out about all the other stuff, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you have to pay to be part of the brand, or do they pay you to be part of it?
for us to be part of PSI, we pay them.
You pay them, yeah. But you're doing a lot of the legwork in terms of the awareness and education and being in the communities with the women. So, I mean, I see all the time a lot of organizations like yours who are like, we're going to get more and can have more control and a larger impact if we're on our own. But sometimes so I worked for the YWCA. We got nothing nationally, but the YMCA feeds down, and every little sentence comes from national. So it's all
Right.
very different.
We don't have an annual. Do we have an annual fee and they take part of our money? I think there's a small fee and they take part of all the money we bring in. And then they provide us like a bank account and bookkeeping, accounting stuff if we need it, I guess. What else do they provide us?
The nonprofit status. We don't
Right.
have to
The
set up.
nonprofit status and all that stuff. I can't remember what else.
But one of the, yeah, but they don't. So for example, when we wanted to spread awareness, and so we printed some brochures and realized that they didn't go very far. And they did give me some brochures, but generally speaking, you also have to pay them for their material. So it's a struggle.
So when my mind was thinking sort of, how many flyers distributed, how many brochures, how many events spoke at, or, of it. If they're not sharing data about how many women are calling, your data can only go so far, because my mind's starting to go like, you should apply for a United Way grant for awareness, but they're going to need some data behind it to fund you.
Yeah, I think they would. I mean, I think they would share that if they had it. It's just like their organization also might not be incredibly streamlined.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think I'm starting to dig into what we're going to do in the chat room a little bit.
One other arm is the training arm, and that's honestly maybe where chapters can have a unique niche, because so PSI puts on these trainings, and so chapters can help out by hosting them, planning them, promoting them. We give some scholarships for them. Right now they're all virtual, so that is one other kind of piece to the puzzle. And the last thing I was going to say in relation to this is that the states that have the coolest things going on for mothers and for families around perinatal mood disorders and perinatal mental health are ones that have their own PMAD nonprofits. So like Texas has this really cool thing in Austin. UNC has their things. There's Poem in Ohio. There's Baby Blues Connection. So it's what I'm seeing. Like, I think they like to think like chapters could do this. Like, you don't have to become your own nonprofit. And I think some chapters are sort of able to do that, but a lot of states have really good resources, but not because they have a good chapter, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Okay. Well, in the chat, I dropped 3 questions. So if you copy those, I'm going to put you in breakout rooms, because if I drop it in the chat now, you go to breakout room, you won't see it. Then you could paste it in your breakout room chat. But I want you to talk about what scares you for the future of this organization, what excites you, and what would make you proud if it was completed. So we're going to spend 15 minutes. You've got 15 minutes. I might give you 18, seeing how it goes. 15 to 18 minutes in your room. Someone should be your scribe. And when we come back, I'll open up a Word doc and we'll put them all together. So let me do that now. Copy those.
Elle, really quickly, do you mean PSI Tennessee's future?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Great clarity. I'm like, oh, we need over.
Like verbally screamed, like, eh.
I think it's meeting for all, so everyone's out. Awesome. Okay, well, let's hear what we got to talk about. Let's see. Okay, team 1. I don't know which numerically that would be. Let's do Mary's team. Who wants to share for Mary's team?
Okay, so I took some notes.
Awesome. Okay.
I'm going to.
You can go in whatever order you want.
I'll try not to scream if I get frightened again. Okay. So for the first one, what scares us for PSI's future, we were all pretty much on the same page with this. Our big fears were sustainability long term, especially with board members leaving and coming. Leadership roles going forward, we all feel like we're in a really good place right now with leadership. That has not always been the case, and we're just fearful of if that's going to change and what that will look like. In relation to that, we felt like PSI Tennessee is pretty fragile right now. You know, we've kind of got this little core set of members, but you know, things could fall apart, especially if, you know, we're not reaching goals and people don't have the time and energy to give to it. And then one other thing we had talked about was how it is difficult to work statewide. It just takes a lot of communication and collaboration. We still have a whole part of the state we're trying to like get into. So those were our concerns.
Sorry, I can't type. Yeah, statewide makes it really hard. You're working with people that you've never been in the room with. Yeah, talk about team dynamics. That's tricky. Okay, what excites you?
We all felt very excited. So what came up over and over again was anything with like a tangible reward of some sort. And so like Christy shared and we all agreed how excited she was that we have our committees now, and that like as part of the projects committee that she's on, you know, she has a set of goals. This is who I'm going to email. We're trying to get people to join the directory. Like she has a very clear, this is what I need to do. And that was very kind of reinforcing for her. I'm very excited that we're doing strategic planning, something that I'm super pumped about it. I shared that I get excitement, but it doesn't get to be felt necessarily by others. But now that I'm running the social media, I get to see when we're getting follows and shares and interactions on social media. And so that's kind of fun. And then we're all super excited about the bridge that's being built between infant mental health, specifically like AIM High Tennessee and PSI, because we've got a lot of shared members and also a lot of shared goals. So that's a connection that we are excited about.
Well, I was going to ask about that. They're a little off topic though, but you are engaging with them, because if not, I can connect you with Angela or anyone over there. Connect good. They're good people.
Yes. Yeah, we have quite a few of our board members that are also involved with them, which is great. We didn't have a ton of time for what would make us proud. And then what little time we had left was ruined by me screaming and leaving the group.
That was only 60 seconds.
I mean, a lot can happen in 60 seconds. Something that I shared, and I think others felt the same way, is I would just be so proud if more people knew about PSI. If when a friend asked you, or when it came up in a mom's group or something, and someone said, I know someone, or I'm dealing with these issues, that people wouldn't miss a beat and say like, oh, you got to contact PSI. That's not the case right now, but I would love for that to be the case. That is something that would make me proud. But yeah, so that was
anyone else want to throw anything that they're proud out that we didn't get to share in the breakout room?
I'll add to Mary's. It's a little more specific. It's, to me, if all of our kind of Tennessee higher education, any profession related to mental health or health, so like all of the blossoming therapists and OBs and family practitioners know that PSI exists. Like, to me, I really want to see it integrated more in training. So those of us who are like, I got my degree in this health industry and never heard about perinatal mental illness or PSI, like I want to change that in our state so that the next generation is really aware.
I love that.
I would say still just breaking the stigma around perinatal mood disorders.
That was my own addition to what you said. Love that. Okay. Anything else? If not, we'll go to team 2. Okay. Who's my folks?
I was the scribe for team 2.
Okay.
In terms of what scares us, we talked about a lot of the same things. We talked about sustainability, and we also talked about not being specific enough in our goals, and getting lost in meeting and talking rather than doing, as well as lack of clarity about the structure of our organization and relationship with the larger PSI. And some of where this conversation came up was just, talking about how when we bring in new members, we bring them in and they kind of come in the middle of the conversation. And we haven't developed a good way of bringing people up to speed when they join.
We call that onboarding. Yeah, we can
Yes.
system
Yeah,
for that. Cool.
I have not done that. I have not done a good job of that. In terms of what excites us about the future, we're really excited about the new board members we have brought on, and especially in the past year and a half, after that kind of initial period. We are excited that our board members are passionate. We have a lot of people with lived experience and working in the field, and that passion comes through. And we're excited about growth and changes that are happening now. And I guess I would add here, because I goofed and didn't write down the whole question for number 3. And so we talked about what we've done that has made us proud rather than what we would be proud of. And we talked about being proud about connections that we have made in the community, and providers that have gotten education, and things that have happened even just in the past year.
Oh, I like that. Okay. As kind of like we did last time, a little bit of an improv. Does anyone want to add something that would make you proud if we accomplished it?
It would make me really proud if we found somebody to partner with us and pay for some pamphlets to go to moms being discharged from hospitals. If there was an external organization that wanted to fund that. That would be
I'm wondering if AIM might be that organization.
I think I can be that organization. Julia, let's talk about that.
Rachel, give us money. I was thinking, is Tennessee still doing the new baby welcome packets?
They are. I actually just talked to somebody about that. They are, and then some hospitals, because of COVID, have ran out of supplies, and it just hasn't been a priority. Which I think of all places, it should be a priority. But I know COVID's kind of taken over. But then I guess, Mary, you might be the closest. Do other hospitals in East Tennessee? I just learned it's St. Thomas that when you leave with your newborn, you have to go into a new parent class before you leave the hospital with the baby.
So Williamson has a little debriefing, and they have a packet, and it includes some information about like postpartum depression. It is not the best, and I would be so proud if nothing else, the PSI helpline, like I would love a whole pamphlet to go home to with every mother who has a baby. But if we can, so get that PSI information into those packets. The spiel is better than it. So I had a baby in April. It's better now than it was 5 years ago. So I feel like we're getting somewhere, but still not, I just think it would be so easy to just send every mother home with that helpline number. Also a magnet, just saying it.
We,
Not
I,
gonna-
yeah, I bet
not
we
gonna
can
put it
make something work, Julia.
So
I love
that
that.
is also what would make me proud, is if we got those pamphlets in, because that would be just huge.
This is what happens when I do stuff on my work computer. I'm going to send myself an email to check on this tomorrow.
Well, and to me, the new baby packets, aren't those coming from Department of Health? Like my thing is we can go the individual hospital route, but that seems like it'll take forever. Or we could just get the state agency that's sending something to every postpartum parent.
Yeah, I'll check with DOH too tomorrow, Diana.
Okay, that's what would make me proud, is to get DOH to send out a PSI pamphlet.
I was thinking about just support groups for moms, because that's usually a free option for them. And so it would make me proud if we had support groups in just even half the counties in Tennessee or something. I don't know how specific we want to get with that goal, but that every mom, and maybe in a post-COVID world, maybe not, could drive to a support group. And that for now, in internet groups, I think we have multiples going on, but as that shifts, that we would have access to a peer support group.
Any other things that would make you proud?
I think I would be really proud if we had a certain amount of people, I don't know, 100 providers a year. And I'm going based on the numbers of people that I'm contacting, that we're all contacting for signing up on the directory. But if we had 100 providers per year, or whatever number we decide to do, that take the PSI training, I think that would be really awesome. And providers could be, broad. We could even get more specific and say we want medical providers versus therapists. But I think 100 a year would be amazing.
Awesome. Anything else?
We had talked about trying to host a training, so maybe if we actually pull that up, I don't know if that's relevant. Y'all did one in the East Tennessee, Upper East Tennessee area. Was that 2 years ago now? I'm not sure.
Oh yeah, it was at least 2 years ago.
So it might be time to think about that on the west side. Again, now they're on virtual, so just getting a lot of people signed up should be easier.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, we're gonna go on break. We are right on schedule. So go ahead, take a 15-minute break, get whatever you need. We'll come back here and we're gonna talk about some priorities. So I've got a fun little tool that we'll use to interactively sort of engage with some of these proud things, but then we'll brainstorm too. So I'll see you in 15 minutes.